Okay, and I think that we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Automation Caffeine, your dose of invigorating business automation tips packed as fun anecdotes and weird questions. We have a different guest every episode from various industries, countries, backgrounds for 20-minute online chat over coffee. And I've checked just now, Gareth does drink coffee. My name is Jesse Meyers. I'm the co-founder of Trigger, serial entrepreneur, and above all, I'm a coffee snob. Today, I am joined by Gareth Pronovost. He's the founder of Gap Consulting, a service agency for no-code. And he also hosts a popular YouTube channel teaching you all the ins and outs of no-code. Hey, Gareth, welcome.
Jesse, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. I've been looking forward to this for a while, I have to say.
Same.
So before we get started, for our live audience, if you have any questions to Gareth, please add them in the comments on whichever channel you're looking at. We'll pick them up at the end during our live Q&A. So let's get started, Gareth. In 3 words, who are you?
Whew, I'm glad you gave me some advance notice on this one so that I could really think it through. Yeah, thank you.
That's a secret, by the way.
Oh, sorry. It's so spontaneous. So I went with no-code entrepreneurial educator. So to break that down, it's educator for me that I think is like the most important. Like entrepreneurial is a part of my personality, but we've always been about education first, and we'll get into this in the story a little bit. But it's always been about focusing on helping other people learn how these things work so that they can live more productive lives. And the other parts kind of just make up other components of my personality. I fell into no code, and I've always been passionate about entrepreneurship as well.
Cool. Yeah, the entrepreneurial part, I guess that's why you're here now. I mean, that makes you be on these kind of things.
Right.
How would you, so for some people that might be looking and don't exactly know what no code is or might be like a little hesitant, how would you describe that to them? Being the educator that you are, you probably have a really good description of that.
I'll do my best. So for someone who's never heard about no code, I like to say, you can build a custom application that manages a workflow or process or series of workflows and processes, and do this all without reliance on code. So essentially, I think of no code tools as kind of breaking into 3 core components. And I think it's usually easier, especially for new people, to kind of put them in these buckets. Those components are, number 1, where does your information live? All the data. Where does it get stored, and how does it interrelate? And so for this, we often use relational cloud-based databases like Airtable or SmartSuite. But there are other tools as well that people are probably more familiar with that I kind of consider to be no-code information storage, vessels like Excel. Right? I mean, if you think about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's just formulas.
And so, it's just a place where you're keeping information, and you can create a couple formulas, and you can, do some fancy stuff. Beyond that, then we get into automation. So how do we move information in, around, et cetera, and ultimately, streamline those efficiencies. And then the third component for no code is how do we interact with that data? And usually that involves some sort of interface or portal or, some stuff, top layer that we say, hey, team members or whoever's accessing this thing, here's where you can get in there and, do the thing.
And you teach all of that. That's pretty cool.
It wasn't the goal in the beginning, but, it just kind of evolved that way. Yeah.
Speaking of that beginning, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I've done some digging, and from what I heard, so you started Gap Consulting, right? After you got laid off and you were broke, right? By turning pretty much your last $50 into $10,000 in just 10 days, while getting married in, if I'm correct, Jamaica.
That's right. Yeah.
And going on your already planned honeymoon. Now, honestly, I gotta say this when I heard this, I'm like, I'm sorry, but this is insane. Bless your wife for going like, you know what? I'm gonna be the sole person bringing in money in this family, but I'm gonna do it. And but let me. Honestly. So you turned $50 into $10,000 in just 10 days while doing all these things. How did that work?
Yeah. So, and you're not wrong. My wife is a saint for putting up with me during that time. It was hard. So, to rewind just a little bit, I was working in finance. So I lived and breathed Excel, right? Like all day, every day, geeked out on Excel. Like I would come home and talk to my, at the time, fiance, and we would talk about formulas. Like I wrote this formula today. Like that's how geeky and into it I was. And then totally unexpectedly got laid off. And we just bought our house.
Oh no! You didn't even tell me that before, man.
Yeah. So Brent, like we were like
problems.
a month into my mortgage, right? Like first payments coming due kind of thing. And we have our wedding planned, 6 months out still, and it's all paid for, thankfully, at this point. But it's still like, how am I going to keep food on the table? How am I going to keep a roof over our heads? And I kind of fell into no code, right? So as I mentioned, I was living and breathing Excel. I read an article about Airtable first, and I thought, this looks like a cool software. Now, running at this in parallel to this, I'd always been interested in YouTube as an educator and just as a platform for sharing how-to stuff. And I always thought it was a great vessel for generating what entrepreneurs would call like the know, like, trust factor. I don't know if that translates outside of the US much, but basically the idea that if you want people to want to work with you, you have to, you have to show them that you can deliver. And the easiest way to do that is to help them, like actually help them along their journey, so that when they get to the point where they're going to spend money, they would not consider anybody but you, right? Because you're the person who got them there. And so that I was always fascinated by YouTube for that very reason. And I thought, this Airtable thing is pretty cool. I'm looking online, trying to learn how to use the tool myself, and I can't find any education on YouTube. So I do my first video, and it's very bad. If you want to go back and laugh, go back. It's called Getting Started in Airtable. I think it was 2018 that we put this video out. And I didn't know what I was doing. Like I didn't even know how to use the software to its fullest. But I was the first one to put out content, and so I got into Google Ads. And this is while we're on our honeymoon. And I said, look, I'm going to be gone. I don't have a whole lot of money in the bank, as you already called me out on. But I said, look, I think this is worth a shot. So I spent $5 a day. I mean, that's what a small bet, right? Like anybody can try $5 a day. Tried $5 a day. And I said, let's see if I can, show people what this tool is. Maybe they need help, and maybe they would consider hiring us. Me. It was not us at the time; it was me. And from that, so this video is running. This ad is running $5 a day for 10 days, so $50 all in. And came back from Jamaica, came back from our honeymoon, and I had 4 calls booked on my calendar for people who'd seen the ad, and they said, "Yeah, I'd like an intro call with you." Which was like, a little intro salesy call type thing. 3 of those 4 converted, which was an insane conversion rate. And the only reason that happened is because I was priced way too low. But I didn't know any better. It was early days. We made a
mistake on our first business, I think. So.
Oh yeah. I learned quick, but 3 of those converted, and that was 10,000 in revenue. And before you know it, I was like, oh, I think we might have a thing here.
Yeah. Oh, nice. But so you say go back and watch the first videos, but did I understand that you actually hid the other ones because you had some even worse videos on there first, right?
That's true. So I'd been experimenting with Excel because I just got laid off, and I didn't know what my next move was. I was doing a little contract work to keep food on the table, but it wasn't my next full move. And so I'd put a couple videos out, 0 traction. I mean, I was just getting my feet out.
Excel, there's so many guides on that, right? Like thousands, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a saturated market, and yet I still hear about new people who become millionaires, practically overnight. I mean, nobody really does it overnight. You never see all the work behind the scenes, right? But
it's the
new
overnight
people,
part
new
is
channels.
It's the end of that journey. Yeah.
Right. The overnight is like the 11th hour, right? But you've been working your tail off for But there are people who are successful in putting out new content, and they find a specific niche or a way to deliver it. But yeah, I didn't have the chops yet, but I practiced a little bit with Excel videos, and no traction at all. It was Airtable that really helped us take off.
Knocked it up. Cool. Yeah. I mean, I guess everyone who starts with like YouTube, it's a little bit of a thing that you have to get into your fingers, like being on camera. The worst thing for me is always like hearing my own voice back. It's
really
strange. Well, in the beginning it was. Now I'm totally used to it. But in the beginning, I would always hear my own voice and be like, "That's not me." But yeah, it is. Yeah. But you said that you started with like zero traction, right? But last I checked, and maybe I'm wrong, but you're just shy of what, 30,000 subscribers?
Yeah.
How did it grow to that? Like, because that's pretty quick to grow such an audience in what I would still consider, I mean, no code, and even if you start with it, Airtable, like that's pretty niche to start off with.
It is, I think there are a couple things at play here. Number one, we've branched outside of just Airtable. So we talk about automation from Zapier and Make, all three of the components that I kind of mentioned earlier, where we've got data and automation and front ends, like all of that. We have our favorite tools that we're always talking about, and building out different use cases and showcasing different examples. So that's part of it. I think the other part of it was just being consistent with content. So many channels, I've seen people come and go in the same time that I've been here. People would put out some videos, in fact, get faster traction than I got. And then they stop, they reach a point where either it's not fulfilling for them, or, whatever their reason is, they bow out. So.
Yeah, so just keeping with it and having that straight sort of, just keeping a video a week or multiple videos, but have that rhythm to it, basically, I guess, right?
Absolutely. And this was my North Star, and this is, I think, one of the harder things for folks to understand when they're just starting. If they want to kind of branch out on their own. You work so much as a consultant to build the other components of your business that the time that you're actually billing, as a freelancer, is like a small fraction of the total hours you're putting in. So, but my North Star, my number one metric every week that I had full control over and that I just never allowed myself to miss was put out a video a week. I think I missed 2 weeks in the first 3 years of the channel. Like, it was really important.
That was really good. Yeah. Cool. So we're gonna go into this bit, and we, as I explained to you before, at Automation Caffeine, we love business automation, so much so that we are building our own AI. And I mean, who isn't building their own AI these days, right? So for each episode, we feed this AI the profile of our guest, in this case you. And anything that we can find on them. And then we ask it to generate the ultimate question to ask our guest.
Okay.
So please remember that this AI, it's still in its very, very early stages. And we have a single intern handling all the training data and everything. So honestly, I mean, if it generates anything at all, it's a win. So here goes. Our AI generated ultimate question to Gareth Pronovost, founder at Gap Consulting, entrepreneurial no-code educator, and business automation expert. After having been exposed to the complicated ways of Europe as an American, what would you choose? A, you can only drink those tiny espresso shots, but everyone is happy speaking English to you. Or B, have your trusted large North American coffees, but you have to speak the local lingo. What's it going to be?
Oh, man. I'm going to go with B. I really love my coffee the way I love it. And it sounds like a fun challenge to learn the local lingo. Okay. Which, I mean, when you're traveling, don't you want to immerse yourself in the culture? So I'm going to go with B. It's a win-win.
So as a European, I cannot agree. But large coffee it is.
Understood.
But I guess that you speak some European languages then. Any experiences trying to converse the local lingo when you were here in Europe?
Oh man, this is such an embarrassing story. All right, so yes, yes. In fact, Jesse, I do have a story for you. So I went to Paris for the No Code conference, No Code Summit, right? Yeah. And I don't want to be one of those American tourists that everybody, talks about badly. And, I want to show up well in, for other cultures and, blend as much as possible. So I homework and research on, how to ingratiate your hosts in Paris when visiting.
Of course.
And of course, you learn a lot of things like always start your conversations in French and ask if you can transition to English. It's just polite. It's culturally expected that, hey, you're visiting France, speak French, which is fine. I have a basic understanding of French. You might say like a grade school level capability. So it was enough to get me through. So this all went pretty well for the most part, pretty well. And then like 2 weeks later, I had a trip to Munich, Germany. And without thinking, I'm just like still in French mode. So I show up to Munich and I just assume that I have to start conversations in German, right? So I get to my hotel and I'm like, sprechen Sie English? And the guy looks at me like, yeah. Right? He's like, yes, I speak English. And so I was immediately reminded that, the rules from one country do not pertain to the next country just because you're still in Europe. And so, the German culture is very different where it's, it's perfectly acceptable to start a conversation in English if you're a tourist, especially. And so I was very embarrassed and I was like, oh man, I tried my best not to be that person, and I still wound up being that person.
Trust me, as being European, I also get this wrong all the time. It's so different everywhere, so don't worry too much about it. It's good that you try. The country that has the loveliest take on this, I think, is Italy. You speak 2 words of Italian, and they go like, "Oh, you speak Italian? This is so good." It's like, well, I know 2 words, but I'll take it.
Yeah, I'll take it. Exactly. I haven't been to Italy yet, but next year, hopefully.
Yeah, and I have some good tips. My business partner and myself, we love going there. So let us know. So
perfect.
You've grown Gap Consulting, right? To you're like a little bit over 20 people now, I think, doing no code projects from the early days to 20 people now.
Yep.
What would you say is the most important part of your approach that made that growth possible?
Absolutely. The secret sauce for us at Gap Consulting was learning how to make this as cookie cuttered as possible. So let me like rewind. The challenge that we were having in the early days was every project we're building is unique and different.
Yeah.
So, it's solving a unique problem, a unique process for a new client in a different industry. And so how in the world do you do this in a way that is scalable?
Yeah.
And so what we came to find out is that we needed to devote time upfront to effectively scoping the project, not just, a high level intro call, but actually putting a plan together and putting use cases down on paper and getting the client or prospective client to sign off on this, what we ultimately call a blueprint. Now, this is the secret sauce. And we are so passionate about this that we will pass up on projects that are unwilling to do that, because it's our process now. It's like, it serves so many needs. Yeah. Number one, it tells you what you're building and make sure that you've captured all the use cases. It also allows you to effectively bid on a project and say, this is what we think this is going to cost, because we know how big it is, right? Before it's this nebulous, ethereal thing that we can't really nail down. And then lastly, I think it becomes the marching orders for someone who's building the thing. So when we go to hand this off to a team to build, and we bring in a project manager and a developer to put the project, put pen to paper, as we would say, they now have a plan to do that. Yeah. And it's, if you let a client kind of just email your team and tell them what they think they want, you're going to go off script so fast.
Exactly.
And it's a mess. It's a disaster.
I can imagine that. Yeah, because you get this like, oh no, I actually forget my last email. I meant to say this.
Yes.
We actually literally had a conversation like that today with some projects, and someone saying like, "Oh my God, now something has changed again," and they didn't tell us before. And I asked specifically about this. Yeah, it's like that. Yeah, that happens. Don't customers sort of think like, look, because they have to pay. I assume they have to pay for the time spent on creating the blueprint. So isn't that just like, I can imagine customers going like, oh man, I don't want to spend money on you not actually building something for me. Like,
yeah. Well, we look at it, and this is the way we mention it to our clients, is that this is they're hedging their bets, really, right? I mean, they are. If we start building something without a plan in place, they're going to spend way more money. First of all, and we've had clients. I remember having clients in the earlier days, especially, that are like, "No, I don't want to spend that money."
Yeah.
Okay, and then we wind up, just going down a rabbit hole with them and building stuff that they didn't even need, and then going back and having to do double, triple work in some cases. It's more cost effective to plan something up front. And we were talking about Proverbs before we went live here today, and there's an American saying, I think it's an American saying, that's measure twice and cut once.
Yes.
Essentially saying, like, spend the time planning before you go to do anything. So yeah, I think it's the same idea here, right?
I agree. That is super important. But yeah, it's interesting to hear how you explain that to them. So the people that you work with, right, like your project managers and the people who build it, from what I understood, they're contractors, as you mentioned. That's obviously also to do with differences in laws in North America and in Europe, obviously. But what makes them work with Gap Consulting and not set up their own shop? I mean, I can see them being these like really good no-code developers, for example, and especially if they've paid attention to how you do it on YouTube and everything. I mean, you're a great example. So what prevents them from setting up their own shop and work with Gap?
Well, we have had a few, of the folks who've worked with us, especially in the earlier days, who have gone on to do their own thing, which I'm in full support of. Like, I'm super excited if somebody wants to take their career that way. Like I said, I'm an educator first. So if you want to go that way, like, I'll help you, right? But we also want to build something that's scalable here at Gap Consulting. And so there's a couple of things we do to really help facilitate that. And the first one is protecting our people. So when we wind up having clients that are not the right fit, and sometimes you don't find this out right away, right? You're a little bit of the ways into a project. We have no problem stopping a project to save our people from burnout. And I think that's really important. So we learned that the hard way kind of early on. We stuck with some clients that we should have paid attention to earlier, and we didn't. And it was a less than ideal situation. Not exactly a case study that you'd put on the front of your webpage. But you have those projects, and then the worst outcome of that is that your team gets burned out. And that's something that we have zero tolerance for now, right?
Oh, that's good.
And the other thing is siloing work so that it's the work that people want to do. So we have some people who are very talented builders, like they're very talented developers. They get in there and they can build automations better than anybody, me included. But they don't want to market themselves. They don't want to also do the project management element. They just want to build the thing, right? And so by siloing those different roles and responsibilities and allowing people to function in the place where they're most comfortable, they get a pretty good outcome from it. So,
cool.
And so do we.
That is indeed, that sounds really cool. I can imagine people, like, everyone has their own specialty, so it makes sense to put them into their strengths and sort of have them do that. That's so each episode, as you know, we ask our guests, as we have also asked you, we'll go into that later, to ask a question to the next guest. And this is also one of the reasons that we had a pilot episode last time with Mark Hulshoff, who's my co-founder, and with whom we talked about his first experience with software development. So if you haven't seen this, I'll quickly iterate through it. So Mark had this experience where they just sold the company that he worked with, and he had sold it. And the new owner was trying to implement it because it was a startup. So they were like, "Oh, we have all these new features that we want to build. Can you give us a quote?" So Mark goes back to the development team, and the development team goes like, "Oh, that's a pretty hefty list of features. Yeah, and they're pretty different. If we want to really do this, we'd better start all over again." And this is Mark's first experience with like software development. He's like, "What?" And he called me because we had just started together, and he was like, "Is this true?" And I was like, "Yeah, well, but maybe they'll do it faster." So that was
Right.
really, like, you described it as like a through the looking glass experience. And his question to you was that Gareth has a lot of experience with different no-code tools and automation projects. So my question would be, what was your through the looking glass experience related to automation projects?
Honestly, it's really similar to what he went through, which I kind of think maybe that's just how you get into this, right? It's like a baptism by fire, right?
Yeah,
it's like
pretty much.
There's only one way, and it's through, right? You have to go through it. Very first client, just kept adding on all this other stuff that she wanted for this project that we'd signed up, and it was just automation after automation, stuff that we'd never talked about early on, and she wanted it all for this this fixed price from the very beginning, which was a mess. Baptism by fire, right? You don't learn
price without fixed scope.
Right, exactly. 100%.
Yeah.
It's a great deal for the client, terrible deal for the consultant.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, needless to say, we don't do those anymore. But
no.
but that's exactly it. I mean, it's like she was asking for these things, and it's like, well, had we talked about this in the beginning, we would have started with a different data schema entirely.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
You want to build this automation that makes it's like impossible to add on at this point, because and we would have built things differently had we had this discussion up front.
Exactly.
So
It's like it was you start with a shed, and then they're like, "Yeah, let's build a skyscraper." You build the skyscraper, and they go like, "Where's the parking garage?" And you're like, "Well, that's an inconvenient time to ask."
They're like, "Yo, no, actually, we need to drill underneath the skyscraper now." And you're like, "Wait a second. If I do that, it's gonna collapse, right?" And they're like,
"It's gonna look like it belongs in Pisa."
Right. Exactly.
So let's take a look at some of the questions that we have. Here we go. We have a first question from Oliver. Where do you see the no-code movement heading in the next few years?
Oh man, I am excited about the education side of things, and I'm hopeful that there's some sort of certification over the next few years for, namely for us as an agency, so that we can say, hey, these people that we're bringing in on the team, we know that they're, they have a basic understanding, basic working knowledge. But I also continue to see new niche tools coming out all the time. And sometimes I feel like new tools are coming out that are new software tools that aren't competitively better than the existing tools. And so I don't think too much about those, but it's the new tools that do stuff that no other tool on the market does that is really interesting. So an example, human in the loop automation. Like I've seen it's like the new one of the new software trends that I'm seeing right now is automation tools that are coming out where you initiate it through some sort of button push or something like that, and there's like a human interaction component, but the automation is still working in the background. It's very interesting, and I'm excited to watch that evolve. It uses the same principles that we're already building with, right? But it's like new trends in the software. Also AI. I mean, gosh, you can't have a conversation about anything in software related without talking about AI, or people will automatically discredit you.
Speaking of which, so we don't have a name on this one. The LinkedIn user says, "Hey, it's fascinating. Curious as to what percentage of your clients are asking for some type of LLM, so that's large language model, integration as part of the solution versus a straight up templated connect point solutions workflow automation. So like how many people want like a sort of a bespoke AI integration versus like the standard things that you can also get?
Yeah, so I'm actually surprised that we don't see more demand from our clients right now
Yeah.
for AI. So from my perspective, what I've seen is a lot of buzz around AI.
Yeah.
A lot of speaking opportunities, a lot of fun stuff with AI, and I've definitely integrated it into our workflows at Gap Consulting. I've got some awesome AI using ChatGPT and some automation connectivity there. And the prompt is the same each time with some dynamic data, and it's fantastic, saves us hours. But the client side of things, people who are coming in and asking for this, I'm not seeing a huge demand yet. So I don't know what that means. Is it a lack of education where people just don't know what's possible?
Yeah. I think it's hard to know what's possible for your specific process. Like, I mean, you've done it in a certain way. AI can do all these things, but you don't really know how to sort of patch it onto your process. I guess there's indeed a lot of educational need. I think on that part. I heard a colleague of mine say something similar today. He's like, yeah, whenever I talk to partners of ours, he's like, I explain what you can do with AI because hardly anyone seems to know how to use it. I think it's going to have to take some time before people sort of start seeing opportunities when they are maybe a little bit more familiar with the tools. But we have a couple more because we have time for one more. So I pick one that I think is really cool, which is this one. So do you have any advice for anyone who's at a rough patch and wants to pivot their career? I think that's a nice question to answer.
Honestly, I get this question a lot. Thanks for the question, Mary. I'm assuming, Mary, that you're meaning pivot in terms of becoming a no-code freelancer or something along those lines.
I assume so, yeah.
And I would say, there's a huge opportunity, right? I'm not trying to necessarily make more competitors for us, but I really believe, I believe it's look, I have this approach to it. Rising tide lifts all boats. We are in this part of the evolution of no code that there's more business than I could possibly handle on our own. We cannot grow fast enough. So if somebody's looking to pivot, couple of options for you. Number one, if you have any friends or family members who are small business owners themselves or large business owners, see if you can help them with a project. Get your feet wet. And now you have a portfolio started. Also, you can reach out to local organizations that are small business focused in your community. See if there's anybody in your community that might need some help with automation, efficiency, productivity, et cetera. That's effectively what we're doing, right? And then, lastly, you might also consider joining up with an existing agency. There are several agencies like mine that are, similarly sized. Some I'm sure that are even bigger that are always looking for new talent. So, there's plenty of options, whether you want to join an existing team or kind of just strike out on your own or just start building your portfolio. You got a lot of choices.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, everyone, that's all we have time for today. The next episode will be live on January 31st, and we'll have Sahil Khosla on, who is a great person to follow if you want to get started on that career in no code. Because Sahil is the founder of No Code University, where you can enroll in courses that teach you everything about no code. So it's similar to the YouTube channel that Gareth has, but he has a whole university of that. Gareth, thanks for coming on the show. I hope that you had a good time.
Of course, thank you.
One more thing, and that is your chain question. And what is your chain question to Sahil?
All right, coming at you, Sahil. How do you imagine the no-code industry consolidating in the future, especially around the small, medium business and enterprise sectors of the market?
Cool. We'll ask that to Sahil next time that he is on. So we'll ask him on January 31st. Thanks to all our viewers and listeners for tuning in today. If you like our show, please follow Trigger on LinkedIn or go to automationcaffeine.com. You can follow Gareth as well. His YouTube channel is very easy to find. Just look for Gareth Pronovost. This show is also available as a podcast on all major podcast channels. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks, Gareth. And we'll see everyone on January 31st. Bye-bye.
Thank you.